Story 1. It was another typical Tuesday, not exciting enough to start thinking about the weekend, but enough to feel tired of the week already. My head was pounding from the dull, repetitive work. I had been staring at the same column of numbers on my computer for what seemed like forever. My mind wandered, desperately looking for something, anything, to break up the monotony. I really need to find a new job, I reminded myself firmly. I had been telling myself this for years, but I had never made the move. I told myself I was just being lazy. But deep down, I knew I was scared of change and the unknown. As much as I disliked my job, maybe the next one would be even worse. I leaned over to my co-worker Alice and whispered, "Hey Al, got anything interesting for me?" Alice and I had a deal that when either of us got really bored, we'd share interesting news or office gossip. Recently, we had talked about things like a red panda born at the zoo was named Ralph. Strange lights were seen flying over Cincinnati, Lima, Vancouver, Cape Town, and Ouagadougou, and Phoebe from Human Resources won $11 on a scratch ticket, bought another one, and then won $5,000, so she's taking her new boyfriend on a trip to New Zealand. Basically, anything to keep our minds alive. We even debated better names than Ralph. Alice liked Buster or Boots, while I preferred Bartholomew and Atticus, and shared our envy over Phoebe's lottery win, wishing we could travel somewhere interesting too. Alice leaned in and whispered, "I've got something good. A serial killer just escaped from a high-security prison. No one knows where he is, but people think he's nearby." My heart skipped a beat, but then I laughed it off. "That's not true, is it?" Alice nodded. "It's all over the news. His name is Sable Graves." "Sable Graves? No way. You're making that up," I said. "When have I ever made up a story, Clara?" Alice teased. I rolled my eyes. Plenty of times," I said. "Okay, fair enough," she admitted. "Sometimes I don't have real interesting stories to share, but this one is true, I swear. And interesting, right? Look it up." I turned back to my computer and started typing SABL, but stopped when I felt my desk vibrating. Things were shaking, clattering. I grabbed my coffee mug tightly to prevent it from spilling over my keyboard. "Earthquake!" someone yelled. My mind flashed back to primary school earthquake drills, and I dove under my desk without thinking. Is this what we're supposed to do, I wondered, also remembering something about standing in door frames. The office kept shaking, but it was more like a deep vibration than violent rocking. I held my breath, waiting to see if the tremors would get worse, and I prayed. I wouldn't say I'm religious, but in a crisis I find myself reaching out. I've always felt there's something greater out there. It never hurts to ask, right? So I prayed, "Please, don't let it be a bad earthquake." The tremors continued, but they were almost too steady. Then a strange humming began, deep and unnatural, suddenly switching to a horrible high pitch. I covered my ears and screamed, trying to block out the sound. Without warning, a blinding white light blasted through the windows, engulfing everything in its glow. That's the last thing I remember. I woke up face down on the floor. I pushed myself up, trying to clear the haze from my eyes. Slowly, I stood up, feeling my body ache as if I'd been thrown into a wall. I looked around, checking if everyone else was okay. That's when I realized I wasn't in the office anymore. I was in a house, in what looked like a living room, a room I didn't recognize at all. My heart pounded in my chest, the thumping deafening in the stillness. I stumbled over to the door and tried the handle, but it wouldn't move. I was locked in. I already felt something was terribly wrong, but now I was sure. "You have to get out of here, Jim," my brain screamed. "Find a way out! Find a way out!" I scanned the room. There were no other doors, just the one, but a large window stretched across one wall. I rushed over to see if I could get out that way. The window was covered by a heavy curtain. I tried to push it aside, but it wouldn't move. It took me a few seconds to realize the curtain was on the outside of the window. Why is there a curtain on the outside? I wondered. None of it made sense, but nothing made sense at this point. I felt around the window for a latch, an opening, anything, but there was no way to open it. Find a way out, my brain yelled again. I looked around the room for something to break the window with. There wasn't much in there. A simple couch, a bed in the corner, a table with mismatched chairs, a desk with a computer and scattered papers. I picked up one of the chairs and hurled it at the window. It bounced back, not even making a crack. I tried again, wham, but still nothing. I touched the window. It didn't feel like glass. More like a thick plastic, slippery, almost as if it was coated with something. I pounded on it, but it was solid, unmoving. My heart sank with dread. I knew I wouldn't be able to break it. I knew I was trapped. A wave of fear crashed over me, and I started to cry, sobbing for a few minutes. But then I forced myself to stop. No, pull yourself together. You won't get out of here if you fall apart. Stay sharp. Stay smart. I wiped the tears away and took several deep breaths to calm myself. Then I switched into logical mode. Look around, I told myself. Maybe something here will tell you where you are. I scanned the room again, looking for details. I realized there weren't many. Something about it felt off. The room didn't feel lived in. It felt too simple, too sanitized. I touched the couch. It wasn't soft. It was made of something solid, hard, like plaster molded to look like a couch. I went over to the computer desk. When I got close, I saw that the computer was also made from that strange plaster material. The papers scattered around the desk had weird symbols on them. When I picked them up, I realized they weren't paper, but very thin metal. None of it made sense to me. I called out, "Hello?" No one answered. "Hello?" I yelled as loudly as I could. "Is anyone there?" I listened carefully. At first, there was only silence. Then I heard a dull scraping sound. I turned my head quickly to see where it was coming from. A small panel in the wall was sliding open, revealing a small opening. I ran over to it and shouted, "Hello! Who are you?" A tray with a sandwich on it came through the opening, and then the panel slid closed quickly. "Wait!" I shouted. "Please, who are you? What's going on? Hello? I want out of here!" No matter how much I shouted or begged, no one answered. I tried to open the panel, but it wouldn't budge. I looked down at the sandwich on the tray. It didn't look like a normal sandwich. I poked it, and it felt like some kind of jelly. It was shaped and colored like a sandwich, but I wondered if it was even edible. Maybe it was poisonous. I pushed the tray away. Then I noticed the curtain on the window was moving. It was opening. I ran over to watch as the curtain was pulled back. I didn't know what to expect, but it definitely wasn't what I saw. There was a long, dimly lit hallway stretching from left to right. It was super clean. The hallway had other windows with curtains, like mine. I could only see into the room across from mine. Inside that room were vines growing up to the ceiling. Blue mist puffed from tubes into the room every few seconds. I saw a couple of small creatures running along the vines. They looked a bit like monkeys, but had shiny blue scales instead of fur. One of them stopped and looked right at me. It blinked its little eyes, then pulled something from a pouch on its belly, a small round pearl. It held it up like it was showing it off, then put it back in the pouch and ran off to its friend. I was trying to understand what I was seeing when I noticed a door at the end of the hallway opening. Something came out. It had long, thin legs and many eyes, and it was coming closer. It was a giant spider. I was so scared I couldn't move, even though my mind was telling me to run and hide. The spider got closer, its eyes looking right at my window. For some reason, I thought if I stayed still, it wouldn't see me. But that was stupid. The spider came right up to the window. Its gaze felt so intense, like it could see everything about me, even things I didn't know were there, like a wrinkle on my eye or a scar on my hand from childhood. Maybe it could even see inside me, see my blood and my lungs. I was frozen in fear, staring straight at it. My first thought had been that it was a giant spider, but I realized it wasn't quite like a normal spider. Its legs looked metallic, not organic, and the body on top was hairy. The creature had many amber-colored eyes around its head. Its mouth had sharp fangs and something like mandibles. One mandible reached out to my window like an arm with tiny finger-like tentacles. It touched the window gently. I couldn't move, and sweat started to form on my forehead. Finally, the creature moved its tentacles off the window and walked away down the hall. That's when I lost all my strength and collapsed to the floor, shaking with fear. Questions filled my mind. What was that thing? Where am I? Why am I here? Is that thing going to hurt me? Is it going to eat me? I threw up everything in my stomach onto the floor. A puddle of acid was left in front of me. Then I heard a loud knock on the wall at the back of the room. The lights flashed in my enclosure. A large panel slid open, and 2 spider creatures came through. They were coming right at me. I screamed, grabbing a chair and readying myself to fight. I swung the chair in front of me and shouted, "Get away from me, or I'll kill you. I will. I swear, I will." But they kept coming. Within seconds, I felt a sting in my side. One creature's leg had moved so fast I barely saw it, but it had a pointy end that stabbed me. My body was flooded with warmth. I'm going to die now, I thought. This is the end. A hazy feeling came over me. I felt at peace. I'm okay with dying, I thought, as long as I stay this comfortable. I dropped the chair and sank to my knees. I watched as the spiders cleaned up my vomit from the floor. Then they left, and the wall panel closed, leaving me alone again. Maybe I've been dreaming this whole time, I thought, as my mind drifted. When I wake up, I'll be back home, in my bed, hugging my teddy bear. But then, my mind started to feel sharp again, and I felt control returning to my body. I clutched my head, realizing I wasn't dreaming. I had probably been drugged when the spider stabbed me. New questions filled my mind. Are those spider things real? Maybe this is a movie set. Is this some weird experiment? Am I being filmed? Maybe this is a reality show. I pulled myself up, driven by a new mission. Find the hidden cameras. There must be a camera, I thought. This has to be a show. I thought that idea was stupid, but it made more sense to me than anything else at the time. Lifelike robots in a weird reality show seemed more likely than real monsters keeping me captive. I searched the whole room, but I couldn't find any cameras, just plain walls. This made me furious. If I found a camera, at least things would make sense. But nothing did. My fear turned into burning rage. I hit the walls with my fists and screamed. Then I heard a click, click, click. I looked back at the window and almost jumped out of my skin. More of those spider creatures had arrived. They gathered around, looking at me. One big one was tapping on my window. Click, click, click. Then I saw a bunch of tiny spiders climb on top of the big one. Their little eyes stared at me with curiosity. Were these children? I wondered. The scene felt familiar, like families looking at Ralph, the red panda, at the zoo. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I remembered what Alice had said about strange lights over cities, the weird vibrations, the humming, the bright light. I realized I had been asking, where in the world am I? When I should have been asking, where in the universe am I? Everything made sense now. I was in a zoo, an alien zoo. I didn't know what to do with this information. Fear, despair, helplessness, and anger mixed inside me and turned into a solid rock of spite. I jumped behind the couch and hid. I didn't want them to see me. I curled up into a ball, away from their curious eyes. Eventually, I fell asleep. I woke up to a knock on the wall. It was the same sound I heard before the aliens came to clean up my vomit. The lights pulsed again. I scrambled to the edge of the room, far from the wall that was about to open. I didn't want to get stung again. I watched the back wall slide open. 2 aliens came into my enclosure. This time I tried harder to see beyond them, where they were coming from, hoping for an escape route, but it looked like they were coming from a large plain box. I wondered if maybe they had to step into another enclosure before entering mine to prevent escape. Then I thought, if I'm in space or on some alien planet, where would I escape to? Even if I got out of this enclosure, I wouldn't be able to just run home. I thought of the blue mist in the enclosure across from mine and wondered if my air was specially treated too. Would the air outside even be breathable for me? I wondered. I saw the aliens pulling something with them, a platform hovering just above the floor. There was something on it, but their bodies blocked my view. They carefully rolled it off the platform and then left. That's when I saw what it was, a human. My heart leapt. I wasn't alone. Getting closer, I saw it was a man, but he wasn't moving. His eyes were closed. "Hello," I said. He didn't respond. I knelt by his side and saw that he was breathing. I remembered waking up earlier, disoriented in the same place. He must be drugged, I thought. I looked at him more carefully. He looked around my age, mid-20s, with dark hair, clean cut, and a strong, tall build. I'd probably find him attractive if I was into guys. I shook his shoulder. It took a couple of minutes, but his eyes finally fluttered open. "Hello," I shouted. "Are you okay?" The man opened his eyes. They were a mix of blue-green-grey, like a stormy ocean. "Where am I?" he asked groggily. I wasn't sure how to answer. I had only just figured it out myself, and I was too scared to say it out loud. It would sound crazy. I didn't want to scare him. "Let him settle first," I told myself. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm Clara," I told him. "Clara, hi, it's really nice to meet you." He looked up at me and smiled, his eyes twinkling. He seemed calmer than I expected, maybe still under the effect of the drug. "What do you remember?" I asked him. "Do you remember what happened before you woke up?" His smile faded. I could see him trying to remember. "Where am I?" he asked again, slowly getting up and looking around the room. Then he swore loudly. "This is a prison, isn't it?" he yelled. He stumbled to his feet and checked the walls. "Do you remember a light?" I asked. "A light?" he said, confused, as he continued to look around. The window curtain was now closed, so he couldn't see outside. He seemed to be checking the walls for weaknesses. He pressed a button I hadn't noticed before. A wide-rimmed bucket popped out of the wall. "That'll be the toilet, I guess," he said, reaching down into it before pushing it back into the wall in frustration. I felt embarrassed that I had been here longer and he was already figuring things out faster than me. "But if this is a prison," he said, giving me a long look, "why are you here too?" He walked straight at me, eyes locked on mine. I backed up until I hit the corner of the room. "You're not in uniform," he said. "So you're not a guard, are you?" I shook my head. "I think we're in a zoo," I blurted out. "An alien zoo, in space." If he thought I was crazy, he didn't show it. His expression didn't change. He kept staring at me with calculating eyes. "Do you remember the news stories?" I asked him. "About the strange lights in the sky?" "I don't read the news," he said. "Okay, well," I said, my words all mixed up. There were these strange lights seen in the sky all over the world. Vancouver, Ouagadougou. I didn't think much about them before. Not until I was taken. I think we've been taken by aliens, I think. Before I woke up here, I remember vibrating, a strange humming sound, and a blast of light. Do you remember a light like that? I think we've been taken by aliens. I'm not crazy, I swear. I've seen them. The aliens, they brought you in here. They watch us from that window over there. When the curtain is open, you can see other enclosures with more specimens like us. "Are you calling me a specimen?" he asked, his voice sounding angry. "I think we're part of their zoo exhibit," I explained. "I think you need to see them first to understand. I know it's a lot to take in. I get it if you don't believe me." He looked around the room, taking in this information. I could see a memory coming back to him, and he had a look of realization on his face. "The lights," he said. "Yes, I do remember the lights. I was in the forest, and I saw a group of lights high in the sky. I thought they were drones, but one came closer and closer to me. It wasn't a drone. I knew that for sure. It was something else. It was huge. It hovered right over me, above the trees. I remember a horrible noise and the light. Then I remember you, here." "So, you do believe me?" I asked. He looked back at me, his eyes twinkling again with that charismatic smile. "Clara, I'm really good at reading people," he said, "and I can tell you're an honest person. I know you wouldn't lie to me." He took my hand and squeezed it. "Yes," he said, "I believe you." I couldn't help but smile. It felt so good to know I wasn't completely alone in this nightmare. "What's your name?" I asked him. He hesitated for a moment, then replied, "You can call me Patrick." "Nice to meet you, Patrick," I said. "I'm sorry this is happening to you as well." "One bed," he said. "What?" I asked, confused. "There's only one bed," he said, pointing to the bed at the side of the room. "You think they want us to, be a couple?" "What?" "No," I said, moving away. "There's a couch too. I can sleep there. It's fine." "You can sleep wherever you like, darling," he said with a twinkling smile. I felt my heart sink. Something about his smile was starting to creep me out. I went to sit on the couch. I watched as he picked up the tray with the gelatinous sandwich. "Is this supposed to be food?" he asked me. I shrugged. He took a big bite out of it. "Aren't you afraid it might be poisonous?" I asked him. "If they wanted us dead, we'd be dead, don't you think?" he said, chewing. "It's not that bad, actually. Want to try some?" I shook my head, deciding it was better to wait and see how his stomach handled it. It wasn't long before the curtain opened again. I watched as Patrick walked to the window and looked into the other enclosure. He waved to the little monkey creatures across from us. "It's showing me something from its pouch. What is it?" he asked. "The little pearl," I replied. He nodded. "It seems very proud of it. I think it might be an egg." "Whoa." He was now looking down the hall. "When you said aliens, I imagined little grey men," he told me. He seemed more curious than scared. He watched as a pair of spider creatures came to our window. One extended its mandible to the glass. Patrick reached his hand out to meet it. Then he laughed. "This is amazing," he said. "If I have to be kept in a cage, at least it's an interesting one. And having a pretty girl with me for company isn't bad." He smiled at me again. "I should tell you," I said, "I'm not interested in guys. Never have been." "The lives we lived before," he said, "they don't matter. Here, this is all that matters now. Our world is within these walls." "What are you trying to say?" I asked directly. "That I think you'll learn to like me," he said with confidence that made my skin crawl. I watched him look back at the window. "Oh, come, you got to see this," he said. "The egg, it's hatching." I saw the spiders move away from our window, so I decided to take a look. I saw the spiders were now watching the little monkey creatures. The two were holding the little pearl, which was splitting open. It was an egg, and inside was a tiny baby monkey. The spiders clicked their legs on the glass. The parent monkeys held up their baby proudly. "I bet they want us to have kids too," Patrick said, grinning at me. "That won't be happening," I told him. "I think you should choose a new name," he said. "Why would I do that?" I asked. "I think you'll adapt better to our new reality if you leave your old life behind," he explained. Then I remembered his hesitation when I asked for his name. "Is your name really Patrick?" I asked. "Yes," he said with a smile. "It is now." "What was your name before?" I asked. "I told you, before doesn't matter," he said. "It matters to me," I said. He just smiled at me and walked away. I watched as he picked up things around the room, examining them. He looked through the papers at the desk. He picked one up and felt the edge of it. He pressed his finger along the corner, cutting his skin open. "Sharp," he said, sucking the blood from his finger. He started folding the sheet. "I always liked the name Rosemary," he said. "I think that's what I'll call you." "My name is Clara," I said. "Now it's Rosemary," he said. "How would you like it if I picked a name for you?" I asked. "Like, now your name is—" My mind went blank for male names, but one name came to me, Sable. Hearing that name, he turned to me, his eyes flashing with rage. I knew I had made a huge mistake. "You will call me Patrick," he said, in a calm but cold tone. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I knew why the name Sable had come to my mind. It was the name I had been typing into my computer when the office started shaking. Sable Graves. I hadn't seen what he looked like. "Why don't you like the name Sable?" I asked quietly, afraid of the answer. "I think you know why," he said. "Don't you, Rosemary?" I looked at the sheet Patrick, or Sable Graves, was folding. It was now shaped like a knife. "Maybe Sable is a name from your past that you want to leave behind," I whispered. He nodded, his expression stony. "Okay," I said. "I understand, Patrick." He smiled at me, but the twinkle didn't reach his eyes. He put the knife in his pocket. I watched him closely as he walked back to the window. He looked out, watching the little monkeys in the enclosure across from us. "They're a cute little family, aren't they?" he said. I nodded. "Rosemary, my darling," he asked, "can I ask you a question?" "Sure," I said. "What do you think would happen if one of us died?" he asked. "Do you think they would go back to Earth and get a new partner for the survivor?" I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. He turned to me, waiting for my response. I don't know," I squeaked out. "I think they would," he said. "Not that I think either of us will die," he added with a laugh. "Not if we live harmoniously together like that little family over there. I'm tired. Let's go to bed, my darling." "I'll sleep on the couch," I said. "Rosemary, my darling," he said softly, "I think you'll be more comfortable in the bed." "The couch is fine," I said firmly. His eyes turned cold again. "Come to bed, Rosemary," he said. "I'm not tired yet," I told him. He started walking towards me. The look on his face terrified me. I grabbed a chair and held it in front of me. "Stay away from me," I shouted. He pulled out the knife from his pocket. "If you don't want to be a family, that's fine," he said. "They'll find me someone who will." I don't remember much after that. I know he tried to stab me. I know I got the knife from him. There was blood, a lot of blood. Then the spiders came at us. Then the sting. I woke up, my face flat on the floor. It took me a minute to realize it wasn't the cold, hard ground of the enclosure. It was grass. I could feel the warmth of the sun shining down on me. I pulled myself up. I was in the middle of a field. I started walking. I walked and walked, having no idea where I was. Eventually, I came to a farmhouse. A woman was there with her kids. She helped me. She told me I was in Missouri. I had never been to Missouri in my life. The woman called 911. Story 2. My name is Melanie. I'm 23 years old and I have clinical depression. This means I feel sad and hopeless most of the time. I'm not saying this to get sympathy, just telling the truth. I don't know when it started, and I don't think it will ever end. I've experienced a lot of sadness and loss in my 23 years, and I think it has turned me into the empty person I am today. My daily life is like a routine in a video game where I only do the things I need to survive. I'm not really sure what my purpose in life is. People say grief gets better with time and that one day it won't hurt as much, but I think that's not true. The feelings of grief come and go like waves on the shore. If it keeps coming back, does it ever really go away? I went to 2 funerals before I turned 12. They were for distant relatives that I hadn't seen since I was a little kid. Their deaths didn't affect me much, but the experience of going to a funeral, seeing an open casket and walking closer to a dead body was a big moment for me. While some people see funerals as a celebration of life, I saw death as something dark and scary through the eyes of a child. After that, I wasn't the same. Anxiety would bother me at night, and I spent 4 years sleeping on the floor in my parents' bedroom. My mom was my source of comfort, and my dad was my protector. As long as they were with me, I felt safe. One rainy day when I was 10, I was in the car with my parents. I was watching the raindrops on the car window, picking one to follow with my finger as it raced down the window. My parents were talking quietly, and I heard them mention Sheila, my mum's friend, and something about a horse. Excited, I asked, "Sheila is getting a horse?" My dad replied, "No, Mel, not a horse." My mom sighed and said, "Sheila is getting a divorce." I didn't know what a divorce was, so I asked. My mom explained that a divorce is when a husband and wife stop being together and go their separate ways. Worried, I asked if my parents would ever get a divorce. My dad reassured me that they wouldn't because they were very much in love. I believed him and felt safe again. But 2 years later, everything changed. One evening, my dad sat us down in the living room to tell us he was leaving. My mom had found out he had cheated on her with the children's minister at our church, a kind woman I had trusted over the years. He was moving out and finding a new place to live. I felt like I was drowning in my own home. A few weeks later, my mom discovered she was pregnant. This news was a miracle because she shouldn't have been able to have any more children due to medical issues. Despite everything that was happening, my baby sister's arrival brought joy back into our lives. She was born early with a round head, a button nose, and strawberry blonde hair. She became our salvation. At 13, I held my baby sister in my arms with tears in my eyes, grateful for the new life she brought into our family. Now at 23, I watch her run towards me when she gets off the school bus. Our routine has become predictable. I wake up around noon, wait for her to come home, and just exist. Sometimes I remember to eat, listen to podcasts, do laundry, or draw. Most days, I crawl back into bed until my mom gets home. We talk briefly, and then I retreat to my room and lie under the covers. Throughout my life, I have lost many people who were important to me, and I will never get them back. My grandparents on my mum's side passed away from old age. My grandpa on my dad's side died of cancer. My cousin took their own life. I had a miscarriage, and my dad is now part of another family. Each loss added to my grief and deepened my depression. The feeling of drowning in my own sorrow never really goes away. I find moments of respite, like holding my baby sister or listening to a comforting voice, but the darkness always seems to return. I often wonder if there's a way out of this endless cycle of pain. Despite the overwhelming sadness, there are small moments that bring a glimmer of light into my life. Watching my sister grow up and seeing her smile gives me hope, even if it's just a fleeting feeling. My mum's unwavering support and love provide a sense of stability in the midst of chaos. I hold on to these moments, no matter how brief, as they remind me that life, though difficult, still has pockets of beauty and connection. At 23, my days often blend together, and time feels like a blur. I try to find activities that can distract me from the heaviness of my thoughts. Sometimes I draw, pouring my emotions onto the paper, hoping to find some release. Other times, I listen to podcasts or music, letting the stories and sounds fill the emptiness inside me. Even on the toughest days, I try to remember that I am still here, still surviving. Sometimes my sister notices my state and makes comments like, "You're in pajamas again." She sidesteps me to reach the doorknob, and I follow her into the house. Our routine hardly changes. I wake up around noon, wait for her to come home. She gets a snack and goes to read or watch TV, and I just exist. I try to keep myself occupied to avoid sinking deeper into my thoughts. Sometimes I remember to eat, sometimes I listen to podcasts while doing laundry, letting the stories distract me. I also draw occasionally, trying to express my feelings through art. Most days, though, I crawl back into bed and lie still until my mom gets home. When she does, we talk for about 20 minutes, and then I return to my room and glide under the covers once more. Just like I said before, you can drown while staying perfectly still in your own home. When you don't see someone for a long time, you start to forget their face. In my mind, it's like in anime, where an unimportant character's face is hidden. You forget their smile lines, wrinkles, tattoos, and even their voice over time. The house is dark now. I'm in the kitchen, absent-mindedly filling my cup with ice and then water. It's snowing in Tennessee, our one snowfall of the year. The snow piles up on the grass outside. If I stand close to the glass back door, I can feel the cold air on the other side. The house is quiet and empty. My mother and sister are on a trip with my sister's cheer squad. I stayed behind because I don't do well on trips anymore. When you float through life aimlessly, you don't notice things as much. My focus is never fully on anything, and what a more alert person might notice drifts past me like a winter wind. My corgi is on high alert, snapping me out of my daze. Her ears flatten against her head, her little body standing at attention by the back door. A low growl comes from her. "Stop it," I tell her. She would bark at a leaf if the wind moved it. Another low growl escapes her, and she stands still. I sit down on the couch with a sigh, drape my blanket over my legs, pick up my iPad and stylus, and start drawing again. I lose myself in my drawing, blocking out all other thoughts. After a while, I glance at the stove clock. Half an hour has passed, and my corgi is still standing at attention by the back door. "Come here, Winnie," I call to her, patting the couch. Usually she would rush to me, excited and ready to jump into my lap. Not this time. Her ears flatten again and she whines. The dim lamp beside me flickers and the bulb hums before going out completely. I get up from the couch and scoop Winnie into my arms, glancing over my shoulder to the yard outside. I live in a big neighborhood with houses close together. My neighbors have fenced-in yards, but we couldn't afford a fence. Animals often walk through our yard. The neighborhood is bordered by thick woods, so it's common to see rabbits, deer, and other animals. When I see a silhouette of an animal, I'm not alarmed. It's just an animal, I tell myself, as I turn on the backyard light. The light casts a small glow on the snow and Winnie's paw prints. The light doesn't reach the animal, but I can now see it clearly. Glowing eyes peer into the glass door above a snout. The slender silhouette reveals perked-up ears, a gangly body, and a puffy tail. It's a coyote, which is not uncommon around here. I'm just glad I didn't let Winnie out for a bathroom break. "It's just a coyote," I tell her as she wriggles in my arms. "It can't hurt you in here." I take her upstairs to my room, so the coyote doesn't provoke her again. After an hour, Winnie falls asleep in my bed, her legs in the air. It's around 11 p.m. and I'm not tired. I go downstairs and fiddle with the lamp. The bulb isn't just burnt out, it's completely blackened. I go to get a replacement bulb from the garage, passing the kitchen and the glass door to the backyard. I stop and turn my head, feeling a deep fear that I'm being watched. A sense of unease falls over me. I look through the glass door and see the coyote still there, now sitting and staring directly into my home. What the heck? I'm good at searching things on Google. After getting a new bulb from the garage and locking eyes with the coyote as I pass through the kitchen, I search for information. Coyotes are opportunistic hunters that prey on small animals, including house pets. Winnie had seen the coyote, and it had seen her. With the snow we've had for a week, prey is scarce. You won't get my dog, I think. I go back to drawing until my fingers go numb. Around 2 a.m., I decide to stop, feeling tired. My phone buzzes on the coffee table. I answer it. "Hey, Mel." "Andre, hi. How's work?" My voice wavers slightly. I still feel uneasy. "What's wrong, Mel?" "You sound scared." "I'm not sad, just scared," I answer, biting my cuticles. "Hold on, let me put you on speaker," I tell him. "Why are you scared, love?" His voice reassures me. Just hearing his comforting tone helps ease my anxiety. "I saw a coyote in the backyard. Well, Winnie saw it first," I explain. "Did she bark at it?" "Yes, but she didn't scare it off. Her small body isn't very intimidating," I say, chuckling. "Being home alone for the weekend has me a little spooked." "It's okay, I'm here," Andre reassures me, "and when I finish work, I'll drive over and stay with you so you won't be alone, okay?" "Okay." I get off at 4. I hate that they have you on the night shift now. "I know, but I need the money. I have to go now, or my boss will be upset. Just hang tight, okay? Only a few more hours. I love you." "I love you," I reply. And the call ends. I set down my phone, feeling a bit more at ease. The coyote is closer. I don't know when it moved, but it did. It's only a few steps away from the glass door, staring at me with wide, wet eyes. I'd only stepped into the kitchen to turn off the lights. I blink and it's even closer, right up against the glass. Its breath fogs up the window. For a moment it does nothing, just exhales misty breaths. I watch the coyote, and it watches me. Then it leans its head back and bangs its forehead against the glass. Again and again. The glass door is now bloodied. I dart upstairs, slamming my room door shut behind me and sliding down the wood. My chest heaves and my skin breaks out in a cold sweat. What was that? My heart pounds with such intensity, it feels like it will burst out of my chest. "Melly, can I sleep in your room?" A voice softly begs behind my door. It's Lila. But it can't be. She's in Gatlinburg. I glance at the hallway light leaking through the gap between the door and the carpet. Sure enough, I see Lila's feet, wearing her penguin pajama pants. I don't have time to question it. There are times I could have been kinder to her, despite the fog in my head. I should say yes to sister sleepovers more often. I shouldn't sleep the day away after she gets home from school. I should play with her in the snow more. She has had nightmares before, calling out my name, screaming for me or my mom to help her. I don't know when my mom and her got home or why my mom never called to tell me, but that doesn't matter right now. I open the door, ready to hug and comfort my sister, but she's not there. "Lila!" I pant, my voice rattling in my throat as I call out her name. Then my voice echoes back to me from the gap where the stairs are. "Lila." Fight, flight, or freeze is a funny thing. Before I know it, I'm putting on a thick jacket over Andre's hoodie, stepping into boots in my pajama pants, and running down the stairs. "Melly, I'm scared." I hear her voice, but I can't see her. The glass door is open just wide enough for a 9-year-old to slip out. The blood, it's gone. The coyote, it's gone. "Melly, Melly, help!" Her voice is calling me from outside. I run through the back door, slamming it shut behind me, rattling the glass panes. I hear barking, wild yelping and screeching. I follow Lila's voice, her cries, with each crunching step of my boots on the snow. I have to find her. I will find her. I find purpose in this. I'll save my sister and be her protector, like my dad was for me. But I'll never leave her side, not like him. I run until I reach the edge of the forest. There's no noise here, no chirping, no chittering, no barking, no Lila. Then the forest explodes in a chorus of wails so loud I have to cover my ears, buckling to my knees in the snow. Harsh screeching and yelping merge into a violent, deafening sound. It slowly dies down, and I hear a baby crying, an infant's colicky cry. Then a voice like a whisper begins pinging in my right ear, then my left. Run! 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 It's odd, but it propels me forward, shaking off the snow clinging to my knees as I stand. It sounds like my dad cheering me on at a cross-country meet the day I achieved my personal record. I had almost forgotten his voice. A sickly sweet scent fills my nostrils, causing me to gag. Melly! Another scream. Melly, help! I press on, deeper into the dense tree line, thick snow crunching beneath my boots. Lila, where are you? I call out in sheer desperation, my eyes darting between the dark trees, fervently searching for my sister. All is quiet except for a single wail. This time it sounds like the call of a loon, a woo-oo. I nearly fall to my knees, but I keep going, tears streaming down my cheeks and neck without stopping. It's okay. I'm here. His voice is soft and comforting, yet utterly monotone with no inflections. I stop dead in my tracks. No, it's not possible. Andre is at work. He is at work. And I know this because he called me on his break. Andre. My head is spinning, but I'm alone in the dense woods. I'm here. His voice calls from the left. I take a step towards it as fog rolls in, clouding the space. The moon, in its grace, gives me a little light. About 12 feet away, I see a silhouette poking out from behind a tree, the outline of a man. A sigh of relief escapes me. Andre. I'm here. Come here. As I get closer, my eyes are filled with tears. The cold bites, threatening to freeze them on my cheeks. Andre, you have to help me. Something took Lila. My mind is a muddled mess, but I stop as something primal and instinctive in me sends a flash of warning through my senses. His hand curls around the bark of the tree with long, gangly fingers. Half of his head pokes out from behind the tree. I can't make out his face, just the outline, but he's tall, too tall. And his arm that reaches across the bark and strokes the tree downward is bone thin. I take a step back. I'm here, Mel. His voice calls out to me, not coming from the thing in front of me, but behind me. I turn around and nothing's there. When I turn back, the thing is gone. The forest goes silent, and all I can hear is the beating of my own frantic heart. That's when I hear it, another loon call. A woo-oo. Melly! Lila! Lila, where are you? Long tendril fingers clasp over my mouth. I catch a glimpse of something fleshy and crimson with sagging tendons, veins, and red bloodied skin pulled tightly to bone, towering and human-like in shape, but inside out. It's strange. There's a gash in me and it's pulling at something it shouldn't. Oh, my intestines. I fall flat, like a VHS tape in fallen snow, spilling its film in a tangled mess. A woo-oo. Story 3. I thought missing my dad's funeral was the worst thing that could happen. I was wrong. Long drives can make you feel sleepy, like the passing white lines on the road are trying to hypnotize you. Add to that the thoughts of my dad's mangled body in the hospital, flashing in and out of my mind, and the 15-hour drive from Stony Rapids to Regina felt like forever. On my first day of driving, around 8 p.m., I had been on the road for 7 straight hours, only stopping once to pee and fill up on gas and snacks. I honestly wasn't in a good state to drive. I had almost no sleep and was experiencing periods of intense pain and anxiety. The flat Saskatchewan landscape turned into green oil paintings through my welling tears. So, when I thought I heard a whisper over the radio, I brushed it off as my mind playing tricks on me due to my exhaustion. Just 30 kilometers from my hotel, I heard it again. This time, I could almost make out a single word: fault. I quickly looked around me. Going 110 kilometers per hour, I tried my best to check the back seat and the rest of the car without swerving into a ditch. Once again, I chalked it up to my tired mind playing tricks on me while being alone in the car on a dark road late at night. But I decided to drive the rest of the way without any radio, just in case. Just 2 kilometers outside the town of La Ronge, where I had booked my hotel, I heard it again. "It's not your fault." The whisper was so quiet that I almost missed it, even without the radio on. I immediately jerked my head to look at the back seat. In the darkness, I swear I saw something fall behind the back seats and into the trunk. I couldn't make out any figure, but the worst part was the noise. The sound I heard when it jumped into the back was like the scurry of 1,000 rats, as if whatever it was had hundreds of legs moving together to stay out of my sight. I immediately pulled over and got out of the car. The cold wind of the night shocked my system as I left the warmth provided by the car's heater. Call me crazy, call me a coward, I don't care. I was exhausted and mentally drained, so if I wasn't just imagining things, I wanted nothing to do with whatever that was. I was only a couple of kilometers away from my hotel. I decided to walk, get some rest, and come back to my car in the morning when I had a clearer head. So I quickly grabbed all my valuables from the front seats, locked the doors, wrote down the location of my car, and started walking. I walked about half a kilometer down the road and looked back. My car was the same distance behind me as it was when I left it. It was like my car was tied to me with an invisible string, keeping it at the same distance. The engine was not on, I had the keys in my pocket, and the doors were locked. It's strange what your mind remembers in moments of terror. I remember looking both ways down the road to confirm I wasn't the only one seeing this. I was. This wasn't my imagination playing tricks on me anymore. This was unexplainable. No one else was on the road at this time, and I was all alone with a possessed Chevy Equinox. I stood there for what felt like minutes, just looking at my vehicle. It wasn't moving, it wasn't started, just sitting there, staring back at me like a dog waiting for its owner before going on a walk. Finally, I saw headlights in the distance heading toward me. I snapped back into reality and, without thinking, put my hands up to try and wave down the passing truck. Not surprisingly, a guy flailing his arms around on the highway at 1 a.m. isn't a situation most people would feel safe in. He just drove by. That didn't surprise me much, but what made my bones tense in fear was what I saw in my car as he drove past. In my back seat, the headlights flashed the silhouette of a massive black mass of fleshy tendrils sloshing around like a puddle of sentient intestines. After about 10 seconds of paralyzing fear, with bugs buzzing past my face and the light from the passing truck still imprinted in my eyes, I did the only thing my mind could think of. I ran. Never looking back, that thing could have my car. I didn't care anymore. I ran and ran until I finally got to the hotel. I ran past several other cars in the parking lot, over to the check-in desk on the far southern side of the parking lot, with the hotel to the north. The area was only lit by 3 streetlights and the lights of occupied hotel rooms. Seeing the lights in the check-in office gave me a feeling of relief, like sailors must feel after seeing a lighthouse shine after clearing a severe storm. I ran into the check-in office, almost giving the clerk at the front desk a heart attack. The clerk was a guy in his 20s with long blonde hair, wearing headphones and a Dead Kennedys t-shirt. "Are you okay?" he asked, taking out one of his earbuds. "Check in for McNeil," I said through my heavy breathing, slamming my ID on the desk. Okay," the clerk responded, looking around as if he wasn't sure if I was real or just a hallucination. "Room 4E, just up the stairs to the north and down the hall," he said, after what felt like an agonizing 20 seconds of looking at the computer. He handed me the keys. I grabbed the keys, and as I turn around and walk out to the stairs outside, I look at the parking lot and see a white Chevy just sitting directly in the middle. There were a few other cars in the parking lot, and I only saw it from the side, so I wasn't sure if it was mine. I was exhausted. I could barely see straight. I had just run for 20 minutes straight and had experienced something I couldn't even explain with a clear mind. I had no plan, but for some reason I began to walk towards the car to check the license plate and confirm it was mine. It was. I walked up to the side of the vehicle, and as I made my way to the back, I saw the whole thing shift side to side. It was as if whatever was inside was staring at me, following me by rotating its entire body to face me. I could see its jet black, slimy tendrils illuminated by the streetlight further down the parking lot, slinking forward as if they had no end. Its disgusting form faced me like an unholy abomination that defied all logic, looking at me and destroying my concept of biology and reality just by existing. My mind became a blur, and everything that had happened to me over the last few days hit me all at once like a runaway train. I was overcome with emotions, and my knees buckled. I was now on my knees in the middle of the parking lot, with that thing looking over me as if I was bowing to its command. Then I was startled out of my trance by the front desk clerk suddenly appearing in front of me. He gave me a look of concern, with his headphones in his hand, though I could still hear the heavy metal instrumentals blaring through them. It seemed my existential crisis in the parking lot looked like something he should probably deal with from his desk window. "Hey man, do you need me to call someone for you?" he said sincerely. I looked up at him and somehow felt a moment of comfort. This kid seemed genuinely concerned for me. Maybe he'd understand. Maybe if I explained to him what was happening, we could figure a way out of this situation together. Just as I had this thought and opened my mouth to speak, I noticed the door to my trunk behind him open slightly. "Look, ow." Before I could even finish the two words, the creature in my back seat had slipped one of its hellish tendrils out of the back and slit the clerk's throat from ear to ear before slowly slipping back into the trunk of my car, using it as some sort of protective shell. I'll never forget the face he made. The look of concern was replaced with shock and terror in the blink of an eye. Blood spurted out of his now open carotid artery with the rhythm of his slowly dying heartbeat. I just sat there on my knees, the brief second of hope I had dying as quickly as he did. As the kid fell to the floor, blood pooling like a lake, I still sat there motionless. Some desperate part of me wanted this to still be a dream or some messed up hallucination brought on by grief-induced exhaustion. As much as I tried to wake up or confirm to myself this wasn't reality, the kid's lifeless body still lay in front of me, growing whiter and whiter with every passing second. Just as my reality was once again collapsing, my driver's side door opened. "They are gonna blame you for this, you know," a high-pitched voice whispered in my ear as if right behind me. "No, they won't. You did this, not me," I shouted back. As a result of my shouting, several occupants of the hotel rooms around me turned on their lights, some looking through the drapes at the commotion. "You think they'll believe you?" it responded, seemingly genuinely curious about my response. I didn't say anything because I knew they wouldn't believe me. I looked around the parking lot. There were no cameras, several people watching now. All the police would see is a man going through mental anguish and a kid with his throat slit in the middle of nowhere. "Just drive to the police station. I'll be in the back seat. You can show them firsthand you're not crazy, and you didn't do this," it whispered. I was now rocking back and forth in complete hysteria. I don't know if I was mentally exhausted or had subconsciously given up at this point, but I began to consider it. Realistically, it was right. What options did I have? Either I could get in the car and probably be killed, or I could go to the police alone and try to explain myself, risking being disowned by my family and locked away in a mental institution or prison for the rest of my life. No matter what, my life was over. I couldn't live with the guilt that I had inadvertently led this kid to a gruesome death. I had to tell someone I couldn't live this way. Either I come clean or I die, and both options seemed equally dreadful. So, against all of my body screaming at me to stop, I got in my car. I almost felt a fraction of a second of comfort as I remembered the warmth of my heater still trapped inside. Once I sat down and closed the door, I felt a sort of stomach-dropping regret I can't even describe to this day. "It's not your fault," it whispered. "I know it's not. You killed him. You killed me," I responded in a low, aggressive but broken tone. "Let's go talk to the police. Let's figure this whole mess out," it said after some silence. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed to the police station on the other side of town, a short 5-minute drive away. "You're special, you know. He gave me you. Of all the people he could have chosen, he chose you," it said just a minute into the longest drive of my life. I didn't want to respond. Whatever the hell was happening was something beyond my understanding. But eventually I realized if I was going down, I might as well know why. "Who?" I responded. "Your father," it whispered. I slammed on the brakes and looked in the rearview mirror. Just in that moment, it occurred to me how large this thing was. It tensed in fear, like a child about to be scolded by their parents. Even in its tense state, it still took up the entirety of the back of my car. I couldn't see a sliver of my rearview window. Just the sight of it made my stomach turn with dread. "Don't you ever talk about my father. He would never let you do this to me, you son of a bitch," I screamed through my tears that seemed to have no end. "Oh, I'm sorry. Your father did want to protect you. On his deathbed after the accident, he prayed for your protection. I just think he didn't realize who he was praying to," it responded. I slumped in my chair. What was left of my sanity was now gone. I looked out my driver's side window and into the inky black void that was my surroundings. The only light came from my headlights and a street light a kilometer down the road. Without another word, I shifted the car back into gear and started driving again. "I think you'll learn to appreciate me after a while. It was your dad's wish for me to look over you after all," it continued, whispering and whispering, never shutting the fuck up until I would completely collapse and fall apart at the seams. I turned onto the road the police station was on, a long road with a dense forest on my right with thick spruce trees all along the road. Nearing the end of the road, close to the station, I noticed an extremely thick tree at the end of the road. If this thing was right, and I'm destined to be watched over by this thing from some sick bastardization of my father's final wishes, then I wasn't giving it the satisfaction of having me for long. My foot slowly pushes the gas pedal. As my car gets faster and faster, I unbuckle my seatbelt. I wanted to make a prayer for my family in these brief seconds, but I didn't know what could be listening, so I simply let the trees rush past as I reached 120 kilometers per hour. As I was just 300 or so feet away from my fate, it spoke one last time. "It's not your fault.